Hi everyone, Brea here from Actuarial, and in today's video I'm going to be going through everything you could possibly want to know about actuarial exams. But before we get into this video, I just want to let you know that I can't go into absolutely all the details on everything here, so if you want any more specific details about anything that I talk about in this video, I highly recommend you go check out my post on this. I'll link in the description below this video, and there you'll find everything. Like, I've gone into so much detail about how this whole actuarial exam process goes. There'll be links to different parts of my website where you can find out even further information, and I've also linked out to the SOA where you can get more details from them. So yeah, if you're writing an actuarial exam soon, or you're just wondering about this whole process in general, I highly recommend you go check out that post too, because there's going to be so much more detail there. Okay, if you're writing your first actuarial exam soon or are thinking about it, give this video a thumbs up and let's get into it. So first, there are going to be some people watching this video that don't even know why we have actuarial exams and what is the purpose of them. So for anyone that's in that situation, actuarial exams are basically a series of exams that anyone who wants to be a fully qualified actuary has to pass. So the actuarial exams teach pretty much a whole bunch of mathematics and make sure that the people that are trying to become actuaries have a really good in-depth understanding of all the mathematical concepts that go on behind in the background of insurance. And it also teaches about insurance and how it all fits together. So these exams are really important because there are thousands and thousands, millions actually, of policyholders that are relying on their benefits and everything from insurance to be available when they need it. So it's important for actuaries to have a really solid understanding of the math and all the statistics and stuff that goes on behind insurance so that we can be sure that policyholders won't be left stranded when their benefits are actually due to them. So that's why actuarial exams are so important. They really help develop actuaries and make sure that they have all the specialized knowledge that they need in order to properly price insurance and make sure that insurance has integrity. Okay, the next thing I want to talk about is exam progression. Now, there are two levels of actuaries. The first is an associate, and the second is a fellowship. You have to become associate before you can become a fellow. And in terms of exams, in order to become associate, there are 7 actuarial exams you have to pass. These are called the preliminary exams. So these exams are pretty much all math related. They do teach you some technical skills too, but for the most part, they're just teaching you the math and everything that you need in order to be an actuary, all the math background that you need in order to be an actuary. So these exams don't teach you a whole lot about the nitty-gritty of insurance and how that all works and fits together, but that's what you learn in the fellowship exams, which are the 3 exams that are after the preliminary exams that you complete once you are already an associate. So, to put that a little more clear, an associate has to write 7 exams in order to become an associate, and those are called the preliminary exams. And then after those exams are met and you are an associate, you can write the fellowship exams. There are 3 fellowship exams, and I'm going to get a bit more into detail about what those are later, but for now, all you need to know is that there are these 2 levels, and there's 7 exams to get to the first level and 3 exams to get to the other. There are some other requirements that you have to meet, but since this is about actuarial exams, I'm not going to go too in-depth into those. Okay, now a little bit about the format of actuarial exams. So the preliminary exams are primarily multiple choice exams. So you'll get 5 possible answers and only one of them is correct. On these exams, if you select an answer and it's not correct, there's no penalization for that or anything. You actually should select answers for every question, even if you're not sure that it's correct. So that's the majority of the preliminary exams. They're multiple choice and they're done on a computer. There are a couple that are different. There's one preliminary exam that is a mixture of written answer and multiple choice, so that one is not done on a computer. And there's another one that is pretty much testing your technical skills. So it's not so much an exam, it's more like a 5-hour project. So you get access to a computer that is not connected to the internet or anything, and you have to complete a series of tasks and just prove that you have the technical skills that allow you to do that. Preliminary exams are typically 3 to 3.5 hours long. But I think the only exception is that 5-hour project one that I talked about. That's 5 hours. And in Canada, actually, some of these exams, you can get exemptions from some of these exams, and you do that by getting good enough grades in certain courses. Now, this isn't something that I actually did, so I'm not entirely sure about how that process works overall. When I was going to school, they didn't have this. But if you're interested in that, go to the blog post that I talked about at the beginning of this video, and I have a link in that post to everything that you need to know about that. It's called the Canadian University Accreditation Program or something like that, so all the details are there. So the format for fellowship exams is a little bit different. They're all written answer, and for these exams they're written in a test center, and you're given 2.5 to 5.5 hours depending on which exam you're writing. Now, these exams are where you really learn all the nitty-gritty about insurance and risk and all the regulations that affect the insurance industry. So these ones are a lot different because in the preliminary exams, you're mostly being tested on your mathematical ability and stuff like that, but these ones require you to have a really good understanding of insurance. These exams require studying thousands and thousands of pages of textbooks and different study notes and stuff like that, so they are known to be harder than the preliminary exams. Another thing that's a bit different about these exams is that they're even more specialized. So the preliminary exams, everyone has to take the same ones for the most part. It depends whether you're going the SOA or the CAS route, but for fellowship exams, you actually get more specialized. So you might choose to specialize in health insurance or retirement benefits, or maybe life insurance, or finance and investment, or maybe enterprise risk management, or group insurance. All these are different kinds of insurance that you have to specialize in when you're writing your fellowship exams. And these are what we call exam tracks. But you don't have to decide on which track you're going to take yet. The important thing is to get through the preliminary exams first, and then you can decide what track you want to take for your fellowship exams. Okay, now a few details about the grading system for actuarial exams. Now, when you write an exam, your score, your final grade, is going to be on a scale from 0 to 10, and you need to get at least a 6 to pass. But a 6 doesn't necessarily mean that you scored 60% on the exam. What it means is that you got 100 to 110% of the grade that was required to pass. So for actuarial exams, the grade that you need to pass is actually usually determined after everyone has written the exam. So that means that it's very relative. So if the exam is really hard, then they will probably choose a lower grade that you need in order to pass. So a 6 means that you scored 100% to 110% of the grade required to pass. Likewise, a 5 would mean that you got a score between 90 and 100% of the grade that you needed to pass. 10% of the grade required to pass. Likewise, a 5 would mean that you got a score between 90 and 100% of the grade that you needed to pass. So a 5 is not good, anything below that is not good because you don't pass, and anything above 6 is great. Employers don't usually need to know your score that you got on exams. Usually what they care about is just that you pass. So for multiple choice exams, it's pretty easy to grade them. It's either right or wrong. The answer is either right or wrong, so there's not much discrepancy there. But for written answer questions, it's a little bit different. And because it's written answer, it means that a human has to actually go through and mark these exams. What they do in this situation is the governing body, whether it's the SOA or CAS, they'll provide a guideline of the best solution to each problem. And they'll see whether the candidate provided all the points that were in the guideline. Now for written answer exams, you don't necessarily have to get 100% or 0 on each question like you would for a multiple choice, like it's either right or wrong. On written answer exams, you can actually get partial marks, which is really helpful because questions are usually out of like between 5 and 15 out of 100. So if you weren't able to get partial marks, it'd be really easy to lose a lot of points quickly. So now let's get into how often these exams are offered. So the availability of being able to write these exams actually changes depending on which exam that you're writing. So the earlier ones are offered much more frequently than the later ones. The first two preliminary exams, Exam P and FM, are offered every other month. So for Exam P, you can write it in January, March, May, etc. And FM can be written in February, April, June, etc. So every other month for those ones. The other more advanced exams, the fellowship exams, are only offered twice per year. So there's a lot more waiting time in between those if you fail, which is really unfortunate because it's a long time to wait, which means you have to restudy for a long time just to keep that fresh in your mind. And it usually takes about 2.5 months to even get your marks, so you don't know right away whether you passed or not. For CBT exams, where they're done on a computer, you do get to know that right away, usually. But for fellowship exams and any written answer exams, you have to wait quite a while in order to know whether or not you passed. Okay, now a little bit about the difficulty of actuarial exams. They are really, really hard. Most people take anywhere from 3 to 6 months in order to just study for one exam, so you can tell how much effort really needs to go in these exams. The passing marks are actually another good indicator of difficulty. For Exam P, which is one of the first actuarial exams, the passing score, or the percentage of people passing, is about 41% each time, and that includes people that have written the exam as their first time, but also their second or third time, which those people writing their second or third or fourth time would probably bring up that score. So you can imagine how many people are actually passing the exam on their first time. It's probably pretty low. Very few people actually get through the whole exam process without failing any exams, but there are a few people that have really good study habits and are really smart that do manage to get through them, and that's a really big accomplishment because it doesn't happen for most people. So you can start writing actuarial exams really whenever you want, but I recommend writing in your second year of university if you haven't reached that point yet. You'll probably want to start thinking about it around that time. If you're already past that, then any time is good to start. You can actually write exams while you're in school, obviously, but a lot of people get a job and are working as an actuary before they've actually finished all the exams. This is really normal. So employers will usually have what they call a student actuarial program, and this program will help you because it gives you paid time off. It helps pay for your exam expenses, and it just allows you to connect with a whole bunch of other people in your company that are writing actuarial exams as well. It's really nice to have that community and that group of people that you can really talk to, because a lot of the time they'll all be at different levels, so they'll typically be someone that has more experience and more exams than you that you can talk to. The nice thing about being in an actuarial student program is that you get raises for each exam you pass, which is pretty awesome. Some companies even have an agreement where if you pass your exam on the first attempt, you get a bigger bonus. Or you get a bonus and a raise rather than just a raise. So in the early years when you're still writing exams, this will really help increase your salary quickly, because whenever you write an exam and you pass it, you're getting a wage increase, and that's always really exciting. But unfortunately, there is a bit of a downside to this too, and that is if you don't end up passing. Employers are pretty lenient, but by the time you get to failing an exam for 3 times or so, usually, they'll end up kicking you out of the program, and in some cases that can result in losing your job. Really, some companies require that you keep on passing exams, otherwise you'll lose your job. It's part of the agreement. So that can be pretty stressful. Other companies will allow you to keep your job, but you'll no longer be in the actuarial program, and you might even see a salary decrease because you're not technically an actuary in the actuarial student program anymore. Okay, a little bit about the governing bodies now. I talked a little bit about this earlier. There's the SOA, which is the Society of Actuaries, and there's the CAS, and the CAS is the Casualty Actuarial Society. Now, if you want to be a life insurance actuary, or you want to work with retirement and pension and stuff like that, or you want to work with ERM and finance and investments and all that sort of thing, then you're going to go the SOA route. And on the other hand, if you want to work with property and casualty insurance, which is stuff like auto insurance and house insurance and stuff like that, or maybe you want to get into business insurance and other unique things like that, then you're going to go the CAS route. The difference between them is really just that the exams are different and you learn different things on the exams. So it will really depend for most people what kind of job they get into when they first start, because that usually determines what direction they go for exams. Okay, next topic is exam costs. So exams are really expensive to write, but after your third or fourth exam, you'll usually have an employer who will pay for your exam, so that's pretty awesome. Of course, that's through the student program. Not every employer has this, usually just actuarial employers have them. So if you don't end up getting an actuarial job right away, you may end up paying for some of these exams yourself. The earlier ones are right now $225 to write, but there are a whole bunch of other expenses for your study materials, and if you decide to join my study strategy program where I help you get through your exams and show you exactly what to do, that adds another expense. But those are relatively cheap compared to the fellowship exams. Now for those, you're paying over $1,000 just to write the exam, and then there's also thousands of dollars in study materials for most of them. So it's hard to do these exams if you have a really tight budget because they are expensive, and the study materials are pretty important and really useful for most people. Okay, one thing that you may have not considered is what happens if you decide to stop writing exams. There are tons of actuaries that start the exam process and then just decide not to finish for various reasons. It could be that studying is just taking up way too much of their time and they have a family and other obligations that they have to meet and they just don't have time for actuarial exams anymore. Or maybe they just don't like the work of an actuary anymore, so they don't want to keep writing exams. Another possibility is that you decide you just don't want to write exams anymore because you're so tired of writing them, and that's definitely a feasible reason to stop because you don't want to keep going through these if you're really not enjoying them, especially if you have lots left. So, if you don't end up finishing your exams, what happens? Well, if you are an associate, you will probably be okay. That means that you finished writing all the preliminary exams and you're probably working as an actuary. In that situation, you'll probably be all right. Your employer will either keep you on in your actuarial position, or you'll probably be able to find another job somewhere else that is willing to hire an associate that plans to not write any more exams. But if you don't get through all the preliminary exams, it can be a bit more difficult and you probably won't end up working as an actuary because an employer probably isn't going to hire someone that hasn't reached associateship yet and also doesn't plan to write any more exams. The only situation where I can see that this might work is if your current employer decides that they'll keep you at the time when you decide to stop writing them. But then you're kind of stuck there for the rest of your life because another actuarial employer probably won't hire you knowing your background and your intentions for the future. But no guarantees, it's possible. I'm sure it's happened before, it's just in my experience, that's what happens. Okay, and the last thing I want to talk to you about in this video is the other requirements that you need to meet in order to be an actuary. So this exam process is really the biggest part and the hardest part of becoming an actuary, but there are a few other things that you need to do. So in order to become an associate, you need to pass 3 VEE credits, and those can usually be obtained just by getting good enough grades in your classes, but there's also the option to take courses with a small exam at the end in order to get those credits. You'll also have to do some online courses. There are 8 FAT modules is what they're called, and these require some time to read through all the material in the course, and then you have to do an assignment at the end. The assignment is just marked as either a pass or a fail, and there are 8 of those that you'd have to pass. And lastly, to become an associate, you have to attend a 1-day in-person seminar where they're going to teach you about professionalism and everything relating to that in the actuarial world. Now, in order to be a fellow, there's the 3 additional exams that you have to write on top of the preliminary exams. There are also 3 more modules that are very similar. You'd have to go through the readings and then do an assignment at the end, which is either a pass or a fail. There's no grade associated with those. You also have to do a project where you look at a certain situation in an insurance company or something related to actuarial work, and you use your decision-making skills in order to decide what is best for the company in that scenario. And this is called DMAC. And lastly, you have to do a presentation. So in order to obtain your final fellowship, you have to go to a conference where you'll do a small presentation in front of a few peers. It's nothing very high pressure. I think there's only about 10 to 20 people in any presentation group. So it's not a huge group or anything, but that is one requirement. So that is everything that you could possibly want to know about actuarial exams. I'm pretty sure. If I left anything out, comment in the comments below and I will get back to you. If you are writing your first actuarial exam soon, there are 2 things that you need to do. First, go sign up for my Exam P and FM study strategy tips and advice emails. I will leave a link in the description below to where you can get those. In there, I'm sending you regular emails that give you lots of study tips and advice and all sorts of things that you'll want to know when you're writing your first exam. And go check out my study strategy program. I'd absolutely love to work with you. I create a personalized study strategy for you. I show you step by step what you need to do in order to pass your exam, and I help you throughout the entire exam. So go check that program out. I think you'd really appreciate it, and I know it can be a huge help. Okay, see you in the next video. Bye!